Hi, Mickey.
Hey, Bob.
How you doing?
Fine. Happy New Year.
Hey, Happy New Year to you. This is our festive New Year's show. Are you dressed for the occasion?
I am, sort of. Yeah, I have.
You have a tie on?
I dusted off last year's hat. No, I dusted off last year's hat, and maybe it's 2 years ago's hat. I have a kazoo.
That's really nice. I brought a tie in case I needed to put one on to catch up with you fashion-wise. And it sounds like, all told, you're sufficiently dressed up that I should put this thing on.
Really?
I do have a nice little sweater vest. What?
I doubt that I'm as dressed up as you.
We got a hat, right?
I'm barely dressed. I have a hat. Yes, that's...
Okay.
So Randy Newman's talking about that.
I'm going to have to take my headphone off to put the tie on. So could you talk about labor unions or immigration for just a second? Thanks.
Okay. While Bob's putting his tie on, we've surveyed our readers, and they claim that they like it more when Bob gets mad. So we're secretly going to try to make Bob mad in the next hour. We'll see how that works.
Hi, Mickey. Mickey, I'm back. Are you there?
Yes. I'm here.
Okay. So are you feeling festive? Are you going to go to any parties?
I got invited to one inaugural ball. I may go to that. Oh, New Year's parties. No, I always have a lousy New Year's.
That's sad.
I'm always alone with my lips wrapped completely around a glass, as Steve Martin said. What can I say?
That's sad. Is there anything I can do to cheer you up?
Probably.
Any chance that I will?
No.
I don't think so.
You were too nice to me last time. You were deferential. People don't like that.
What, did the commenters complain?
Some of my longtime, people I know who watch the show said, they don't like it when you're too nice.
When I'm too nice.
So,
okay.
That's not your character. It's like what if the lead character on House suddenly became a nice guy? That would sort of destroy the drama.
Ratings down. Okay.
So, go ahead.
I'll try to lose it in the course of the next hour. I will try to lose control totally.
Good. We want to.
We're going to do some New Year's-y stuff at the end, right?
Yeah.
So that'll keep people on the edge of their seats. But then we were going to talk about actual current events first.
It has to be better than the New Year's show on George Stephanopoulos, which, while it had a lot of great people on it, was strangely fell flat.
Really?
Really. Jake Tapper's a very good host, though. He's so much better than David Gregory. It's unbelievable. Anyway,
who was the host?
Jake Tapper.
Ah, yes, of Salon. Is he the former doorknob licker?
No, that's Savage. God.
No, I think you're wrong.
No,
that's not Savage.
You're completely wrong, Bob.
I'm completely wrong?
You're completely wrong.
Somebody from Salon wrote that when he had the flu and he was around some Republicans or something, didn't he say he licked the doorknob hoping that he would transmit the flu to them? Am I wrong?
Gary Bauer. That was Savage, who was I think runs an alternative newspaper in Portland, Oregon, maybe, or Washington somewhere. Anyway, he's a completely different guy, okay?
And he was not associated with Salon at all?
He was, but that doesn't mean that Jake Tapper was that guy. Jake Tapper
You're right. It does not follow inexorably that one person working at a magazine is the same person as another person working at the magazine.
Good.
Yeah.
We're starting
I'm clear
off
on
with
that.
the epistemological basics here.
Okay. So auto bailout. Are we moving right into that, or do you want to say more about that?
No, that's okay. But people should know that there's a New Year's thing coming at the end.
Yes.
Well, last time we got on the New York Times with this sort of rambling discussion of the auto bailout, where I actually got to your left. I was supporting the bailout, and you were against it.
Yeah.
And my theory of the bailout was that, in its early forms, was that it was like a bankruptcy, except it didn't call itself a bankruptcy, so consumers wouldn't be scared away, but it would require all the sacrifices that bankruptcy would require. As the days progressed after we taped that, it became clear to me that blogger Walter Olson was right, and that the point, as far as the UAW was concerned, was precisely to avoid all the sacrifices that they would be required to make under bankruptcy, where their contracts could be voided and the court, not the UAW, would decide what to give up, and they would have to give up probably more. So at that point, there was a big fight in the Senate, and Corker asked the UAW to make concessions, and they refused. At that point, I sort of turned against the bailout, saying, well, this is just an attempt to get the UAW off the hook, and customers already know these firms are in trouble, so whatever bad PR has already happened. Customers have already stopped buying their cars, so it can't get any worse in terms of scaring away customers, and bankruptcy would probably be the best thing. And I was worried that, this was going to be a huge multi-billion-dollar bailout, and the UAW would never have to make concessions, and et cetera, et cetera. Then I read this column by Stephen Pearlstein, a columnist for the Washington Post, and he basically convinced me, well, it's a one-time bailout. Congress will never have the appetite for giving them another $17 billion. So they take this money, and they'll have to, this is it, they'll have to make whatever concessions, cut whatever deals with the debtors and the unions and the suppliers that they can, and then they'll either sink or swim because Congress ain't going to give them any more money. And that sort of rang true to me, so I wrote this column saying, well, don't worry, Congress isn't going to give them any more money. The bailout's perfectly okay, and they're going to have to make, the UAW is going to have to make whatever sacrifices are necessary, or else, the firms are going to go broke.
So there's been one complete pendulum swing in your views since we last spoke, and you're back where you started when we spoke?
I think there are three pendulum swings because...
Oh, there's more to come?
Well, because I'm not convinced anymore that Congress isn't going to give them more money. I'm pretty convinced. I think that's right. Various people on the right have said, no, the craven Democrats will open a sluice from the federal treasury to the UAW to prevent them from having to give up their $55 an hour wage and benefit package. And I guess I can't... Obama seems like the type of guy who would not go along with that. And he has said, look, don't waste this opportunity, cut the deal now. He hasn't specifically said, no, there's not going to be any more money, though, and Congress may have other ideas. So I'm now thinking that I don't know what to think. I think the bailout was good, and I think they won't give them any more money, and I think they'll have to make sacrifices. But
you don't think they'll give them more money if they run out of money? It seems to me they're almost guaranteed to.
In March?
Yeah.
The initial bailout wasn't popular with voters. You think if they come back in March and say, we've been unable to cut enough expenses, we, the UAW, don't want to give up enough of our wages to make these firms competitive, so therefore we're asking you, Congress, to give us even more money, I think that would be very, very tough for the Democratic Congress to do, even with their majorities. For one thing, it gives the Republicans a big issue to coalesce around on which the voters would be on their side. And, 60-40, 55-45 on their side. And I don't think, why would the Democrats want to give the Republicans that? That would be very stupid.
Okay. Maybe you're right. So you're now for the bailout, but if it comes up for renewal, you'll be against it.
Yeah, I'm for giving him a one-time huge shot of money
and the unions did give up a bunch of stuff, right?
Well, they've said they're going to give up the jobs bank, which was this thing where basically you got lifetime employment. They've said they're going to delay payments to this some sort of trust that's set up for retirees. They have told, I think informally, GM and Chrysler that they would reopen the contract, but they have been unable to specify any actual contract concessions that they will give, and that seems to be what they're trying to hold the line on. They're trying to hold the line on their current contract and get to 2011 when this new contract takes effect, where new hires can be hired at $14 an hour. I think they're trying to preserve the sort of integrity of their contract process and not give up anything that would hurt current
so
worker.
So they are accepting a wage hit 2 years hence, or did I misunderstand?
No, you misunderstood. Current workers are not accepting any wage hit. The future is a two-tier system.
New workers.
New workers. But of course, they haven't hired new workers because they haven't hired anybody. They've been shedding workers, not hiring workers. So, as somebody who just took a 10% pay cut, okay?
You just took one?
I took a 10% pay cut. I didn't say delay it till 2011. I didn't say Congress bail me out. Okay? I just ate it and was actually happy to get away, don't tell Slate that, with as little as 10%. I think
you should talk a little more about this. Were you singled out for special persecution, or was this a slate-wide thing?
I haven't the faintest idea if I've been singled out. I had a meeting with the editor, and we talked about pay cuts, and I said 10% would be fine, and he could take...
You said 10% would be fine? You need a union representative.
He can take 5% more if he wants, if he needs it. I don't know what else he's cutting. I assume he's cutting all the freelancers and contractors, and I don't know what budget cuts for actual Slate employees have been imposed, but...
it's funny. The rumor I had heard was that nobody's getting hit except for you. That they were that you were gonna be kind of their safety net here.
No, I would believe that. Believe me, I'm paranoid enough to believe that. But
no, it's true. I think it's true.
I suspect it's not true.
In fact, I think interns got raises, Mickey.
No, that's right. They got spot treatments.
It's funny. I dropped by the Slate Washington office, and people were getting massages at their desks. And the masseuses were like, I don't know, it was like $100 an hour.
That goes on all the time. So,
but that's not new.
And under Obama, it'll be even more greater. But anyway, I have a little sympathy for people who, when their firms are going bankrupt, refuse to, make concessions. And the UAW isn't refusing.
Did you just say that imply that Slate is going bankrupt?
No.
Possibly the whole Washington Post? You want to start that rumor?
No, General Motors is going bankrupt.
Yeah, but I thought the analogy was...
Well, the analogy is that they're in a dire situation, and they are saying, we're trying to protect our current contract. Now, they will make concessions, obviously, but they're slow, grudging concessions, and they're milking as much money from Congress as possible to avoid concessions, and that's one of the whole problems with unionism, is that instead of a relatively quick transaction like the one I had with my editor, it's a long, drawn-out, year-long process of tooth-pulling, and by the time it's all over, the firm's in a bigger hole than it was at the beginning. It's too little, too late. That's one of the basic criticisms of the UAW. But it's not their fault.
I think I'm predicting that there's no way that the auto companies don't need more money in a few months. Do you really think that this is going to turn them around, or you think that at least that they'll be in a position to glide gracefully into a conventional bankruptcy then?
Well, a prepackaged bankruptcy would be a good solution, but that's of course sort of what the UAW is trying to avoid. But it might be preferable to an unprepackaged bankruptcy. I can see Congress saying, here's $10 billion more, and really this is it. We meet it this time. Since they're giving away money willy-nilly to everybody else.
I think that's the kind of thing that will happen, yes.
And will they really mean it this time? I think certainly by the next tranche, public opinion will be so opposed that there'll be no way Congress can give them even more money. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's probably what's going to happen. Yeah. But, I guess I sort of think it's a good thing because... as we talked about last time, even postponing the inevitable at this point is a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, my line is just that, I have a couple of questions about it. One is, aren't we really, with this bailout, subsidizing a lot of workers who are not in the United States? I mean, not just factories, a GM factory or two, assembly factory in Mexico, but also if you look at the auto parts chain, I would assume that if you accept the premise that absent the bailout, all of these companies tank, which probably is not true, but anyway, that if you trace the chain of that all over the globe, you'd find that actually, by keeping the companies afloat, you're subsidizing a whole lot of workers who are outside of America. That's one issue I have.
I don't think the government... You have a problem with that? I thought your whole...
Yeah, I do.
I thought your whole...
I do. I think each government should take care of its own workers. when it comes time to subsidize, I mean, I hope workers abroad can benefit from free trade, which I'm in favor of. But no, I don't think our government should be in the business of subsidizing workers abroad.
Canada has stepped up with its own bailout money. That would be the biggest foreign country that would benefit. But go ahead.
You mean they're helping out on this?
They have their own bailout going.
And that helps our companies, or no?
That helps GM, yeah.
Oh, okay, that's good. Yeah. And just the other thing is, I think everyone's acting as if, okay, here's what would happen if all three went under. Well, all three aren't going to go under, I don't think. And they're not going to all disappear. I mean, first of all, if one says, it's curtains, we're dead, I suspect that some foreign company would buy their assets and keep some of them going. And if one of them dropped dead completely, I think that would provide enough relief to the other two to keep them going, because customers would have to migrate. So,
well, Chrysler is dead, so that
it's not dead. It's still around. You keep saying that.
Well, but everybody assumes that they're not going to be around a year from now. The argument against what you're saying is that even though you would think Chrysler going broke would be good for GM and Ford because it opens up a chunk of the market that they can take. In the meantime, a bunch of suppliers go broke and disrupt the supply chain for everybody, so that they really are interdependent in a way that capitalist competitors are not supposed to be interdependent.
I actually think the modern economy is, in that sense, highly resilient. First of all, tons of... Well, anyway, I really...
Putting together
really
a car is a pretty complicated process, and you have to source parts sort of years in advance or months in advance, and I don't think it's that easy, even in an internet age, to come up with...
But it's not clear to me why parts companies that are supplying GM would go under if Chrysler tanked.
Because they're also supplying parts to Chrysler, and Chrysler has stopped paying them.
So you're saying Chrysler tanks, and then Toyota, Nissan, GM, everyone is dead? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, Honda and Toyota have come out in support of the bailout precisely for this reason, also because they don't want to be seen as sticking their knife in the backs of their U.S. competitors. But the argument is that you have a supplier who supplies Ford, and he supplies Chrysler. Chrysler goes broke. He goes broke because he doesn't get paid, and then Ford doesn't have a supplier. That's the argument. Yeah. I don't know if that's scare tactics or not. You would think
with no evidence at all in hand, I casually dismiss the scenario.
Okay, well, it's you against every industry analyst that I've seen, but
I have a better track record than they do.
We'll get to that. But anyway, that's
okay. So auto bailout.
So auto bailout.
Anything else on that?
No.
Because we got a ways to go, I think.
Yeah.
We're 17 minutes in. I remain skeptical.
Okay.
I'm glad that after many pendulum swings...
You would just not have bailed them out at all and let them go bankrupt?
I might have favored something that was explicitly assistance in moving toward bankruptcy. But I'm highly skeptical. I don't know. I don't really purport to know what I'm talking about here. I haven't seen the numbers. I don't know what the stakes would be exactly, and I don't trust the estimates. But I just think that when push comes to shove, there usually turns out to be more resiliency and more capacity for comeback than people admit to when they're in the business of seeking large bailouts, for one thing. And I don't think you would see in any event what people are kind of envisioning, which is all three die, and all their workers unemployed. I think no way that happens.
Okay.
So I'm at least highly skeptical of the scenarios that are being trotted out to support the bailout.
That's the emerging Republican position. So,
well,
I applaud you for your heterodoxy.
Well, Obama's moving to the right, and I might as well move with him. Not on this necessarily, but okay. So what else, Gaza?
We wanted to talk about Gaza. I don't know what your take would be, so I'm interested in finding out.
Yeah, you know what my take would be. Come on.
Well, your take is going to be, well, obviously you're going to say this is a huge mistake, and I'm going to say, oh, but look at the silver lining in the cloud, which is that Egypt. It's become clear now that the conventional Arab powers really don't like Hamas and aren't really doing much to assist it, and this might actually help the peace process because Hamas will be abandoned by the frontline Arab states and even the rear-line Arab states, except for Iran, and it'll be good for Fatah, and Israel can negotiate a peace with Fatah.
Well, Hamas had already been abandoned by Egypt, and
now they're actually shooting at them.
Well, whatever, but they didn't have them on their side. Hamas had been embraced by Iran and Hezbollah, and I think the effect of this is to swing power toward Iran and Hezbollah because Arab opinion, and it imperils, I think, the governments you're talking about, Egypt and Saudi Arabia, because, especially Egypt, because Egypt is now conspicuously in conflict with Hamas, and I'm sure Arab mass opinion in Egypt is overwhelmingly in favor of Hamas. So I think this makes it harder, and it makes it harder for somebody like Syria to do business with Israel. The big policy decision that the Obama administration was supposedly going to make was you try to solve the Palestinian problem, or you try to first broker a deal with Syria and Israel and then move toward Palestine. Well, I think this makes it just about politically impossible for Syria to now be seen doing business with Israel.
Well, for a few months, but don't things change quickly? I mean, surely Arab states are capable of siding with Hamas for a few months and knowing in the back of their minds that they really don't like Hamas and they're going to abandon it at the earliest opportunity.
I suspect it's more than a few months. It depends on what else happens. But that's the other thing is, like, what good thing does Israel imagine ensuing, really, in the longer run from this, 3 to 6 months? I mean, do they imagine some moderate government magically emerging to replace Hamas? As a general rule, these things exert a radicalizing influence. They have in the past. I mean, in fact, much of Israel's history of interaction with the people in Palestine is to do things like this that radicalize them, and now they're very radical.
Well,
so what is it that you're hoping, if your job here is to paint the sunny scenario, what are you hoping Gaza is going to look like in 6 months as a result of this?
I assume that they're hoping that the residents of Gaza will decide we don't need this tourists from Hamas, and which there was some sign that they were chafing under the rule already, and that they'll opt for somebody else. I agree that seems like a long shot. But what was Israel supposed to do? I mean, they're sitting there and their rockets coming down on them. Are they supposed to do nothing?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'd say this is a position I'm so often in talking about either American policy or Israeli policy. It's like, well, what were they supposed to do given the situation they were in? And I would go back and list several fundamental things they did wrong to get to this point.
Well, go ahead,
right?
Do it.
Well, the unilateral withdrawal from Gaza without any negotiation, which had the predictable effect of empowering the radicals and weakening the moderates because it looked like they were chased out by terrorists. Okay? People predicted that in advance. That's what it did. Secondly,
do you think Hamas wouldn't have, if they'd done that, Hamas wouldn't have come to power in Gaza? How would that make? I thought Hamas came to power because Fatah was corrupt. How would Fatah be any less corrupt?
Well, actually, this leads to the second thing, which is that I think the withdrawal could have been handled in a way that that kept Hamas from coming to power. I mean, as I recall, the withdrawal precedes the election that Hamas won, right?
I think that's
Hamas
right.
was not in power at the time of the withdrawal.
I think that's right.
Okay. So they withdraw, they strengthen Hamas, and then say we're going to have this election. Okay. So they've now increased the chances that Hamas will win the election, if you ask me. And we said, and it's fine for Hamas to participate in the election. Then we have the election, Hamas wins, and we say, no. You can participate in the election, but you can't win. So we're not going to recognize you. Okay, now, as you know, I think that was a very big mistake. I think you got a much better chance of bringing out the relative moderates in Hamas and get a really long-term truce if Hamas is the legitimate, recognized government or playing a big role in a coalition government, than if you say, no, you're illegitimate and alienate them. And remember, that too, refusing to recognize them, that was supposed to work against them. But oops, no, they actually then took over all of Gaza by force.
You think if we recognized them, they would not be shelling Israel?
I think there's a much better chance of that, absolutely. Absolutely. After they won the election, and you treat them like a legitimate government, and you start, trying to, in effect, buy off their elites by saying, okay, hey, look how great it is to be a real recognized government, state dinners, business class, I think you have a real chance, yes, of moderating them. I mean, you tell me, how could it be kind of worse than it is now if you had done, what would be worse? Suppose that had not worked. Would it be any worse than where we are now? I don't know. I just think it's been mistake after mistake after mistake. Now, if you ask, should they...
It would be worse because Fatah wouldn't be in power in the West Bank. It would be a Hamas government.
Well, I forget what the actual structure of the government was going to wind up being, but, and then, I mean, if you want to revisit, well, let's don't get started on the settlements. But that, of course, is another has been obviously a huge source of friction. I mean, the need to defend the settlements.
But they removed the settlements on Gaza, and they don't need to defend them anymore, and they still got shelled.
Well, right, but as I said, they should have done it in a negotiated way.
But given that the war has started, don't we want Israel to be as effective as possible? It would be good if they.
But it'd be good if they had a lower ratio of civilian deaths to militant deaths. That would be good. Right now, they're killing one civilian for every 5 militants they kill.
It's very hard to concede an outcome in which Hamas won't declare victory and have it be believed in the Arab world. But we would actually like as much of their military power and infrastructure to be destroyed as possible, no?
Well, it depends on what ensues from that. If chaos ensues, which is likely, that could be worse than what you have. I mean, what you have right now is
I thought we couldn't imagine anything worse than what we have.
Well, in this scenario, I actually can. I mean, 6 months ago, you at least had an entity with which you could negotiate a truce that was semi-effective, for at least some months to come. If you could Hamas could wind up being replaced by something worse than that. Could be better. I'm just saying you don't know that if Hamas is wiped out, you get something better. I don't know.
Hard for me to imagine anything worse, but okay.
But I mean, if you ask, okay, what should they have done, given where they were as of a few days ago when Hamas was resuming, more robust missile fire? It seems to me if their goal was to get another truce, another negotiated truce, semi-effective that you can live with, I think you certainly wouldn't apply this much heat, because I think this makes it basically politically impossible for Hamas to agree to any truce anytime soon. So I think this attack has kind of taken that off the table.
And what do you think the timing of the attack is? They wanted to do it while Bush was still in power, or they wanted to specifically undermine Obama?
I think it's neither of those. I think it's about Israeli electoral politics.
Okay.
I think it's trying to, the threat the government will face in the election is from the right, from Netanyahu, and they want to act tough. They're like Obama saying he's going to send 20,000 troops into Afghanistan to head off the threat from the electoral threat from the right. I think that's the one prism through which this at least makes sense. It's rational. In my mind, it's not clear to me. There it's very clear what the goal is. It makes perfect sense. I mean, whereas geopolitically, I do not totally understand what the goal is.
So you think it's totally coincidental that this just happened to happen in Bush's final days?
Well, it may be that yes, they'd rather do it now than after Obama, but I think doing it after Obama, as I recall the timing of the Israeli elections, would make it so close to the Israeli elections that it would be too suspicious anyway.
I think that's right. See, I hear that Netanyahu's moving to the center.
Well, everybody moves to the center as an election approaches, both left and right. But, what they'll do afterwards, who knows? Right. I would commend, there is this good op-ed in the New York Times by Benny Morris, which on the one hand, it's called Why Israel Feels Threatened, and it's designed, he's an historian, and I doubt he's a big supporter of this policy, but still the piece is designed to show you why Israel is of a mindset that it wants to do something like this, okay, because it feels that the walls are closing in. It does do a very effective job of that, of explaining, and I will say, look, if you were living in Israel, you would want something done. even though it's true that, the actual casualty rate from the missiles is pretty low, certainly compared with what the Gazans are enduring, still, it's a very unsettling feeling to have any appreciable chance at all that a missile is going to land on your house, and any government would do something. I'm not denying that, and I don't claim that the menu of options that Israel faced was attractive. My main claim is that Israeli and American policy have been highly complicit in getting them to the state that they were in, although it was never an easy thing to solve. But anyway, this New York Times piece, it does a good job of laying out why the various things that are making Israel feel threatened, and there are a lot of them, but it just seems that in general, these problems are exacerbated by this policy. For example, here's the second of the two big general sources, he says, of the foreboding. Okay, public opinion in the West is gradually reducing its support for Israel as the West looks askance at the Jewish state's treatment of its Palestinian neighbors and wars. Well, obviously, this is going to exacerbate that. It says Israel's worried about Iran and Hezbollah. I think this is going to strengthen that. It says the fourth immediate threat is internal. It is posed by the country's Arab minority. Over the past 2 decades, Israel's 1.3 million Arab citizens have been radicalized. This is going to radicalize them further. So, if you look at this piece that's designed to show you why Israel felt it had to respond robustly, and look at it closely, it seems to me it just calls into question the whole robust response. But maybe that's just me. What do you think, Mickey?
No, I defer to you on Middle East matters. As you know,
you defer to me on all things that could get a person in a lot of trouble.
I've said things that could get me into trouble. I survived at the New Republic by being ignorant about the Middle East, and it's a policy I vow to maintain. So
yeah,
but
my tenure at the New Republic, I was a little less judicious in my utterances at the New Republic.
I think we will let Joe Klein go over the side and see if the other side's machine guns are working. And they're not.
He is way ahead of me. He's several bunkers ahead of me.
They're not working. So the third topic we were going to talk about was how's Obama doing. I think we can dispense with that pretty quickly. He's doing great. Even the key sign that he's doing great, his cabinet. I keep looking for the sots he's going to throw to the left, like Clinton appointing this woman, the Roberta Achtenberg. Clinton appointed this lefty from San Francisco, Roberta Achtenberg, to an assistant secretaryship of HUD, where she did all sorts of bad things, including Mau banks into giving loans to people who couldn't afford their houses and starting the whole subprime crisis. I haven't seen any sort of sop to the left that Obama has thrown yet. I guess you could say that the Labor Secretary is such a sop, but she doesn't particularly alarm me.
What does the Labor Secretary actually do anyway?
Well, the Labor Secretary gives out a lot of money. The Labor Secretary decides what to do with training programs, which are really important, and there's a lot of training money. The Labor Secretary champions Labor's cause, in this case for the misguided card check proposal, but she's not going to make the call on whether Obama supports card checks, so that's okay. There's a lot of OSHA safety-related things that are very important in terms of does the government really crack down on employers or does it do the employer's bidding? And I have a feeling this woman seems like the type who will be good on that. As you know, one of the reasons I don't like unions is because I think the government can perform a lot of the functions related to worker safety that unions used to have to perform themselves. But if the government's not doing the job, then my argument falls apart. So I wanted an OSHA that's pretty tough. But we haven't gotten to the only thing is, and Bob Kuttner is upset. That's the key positive thing. Is Bob Kuttner wrote
when he's unhappy, you're happy.
An anguished column about how progressives have been shut out, and normally his mode is to suck up to the president at this point, and if he's not even bothering to suck up and is just going into full dissent mode, that's great. But we haven't gotten to the second layer of assistant secretary appointments yet. And as all Washington Monthly alumni know, those are the key appointments in government. That's where the rubber meets the road in terms of the political appointees meeting the permanent bureaucracy. That's where the policy, to the extent it is made in cabinet departments at all, really gets made. And so there could be some trouble there, but so far
yeah, but
so
usually
great.
the secretaries usually have a lot of sway over that, right? I mean, that's...
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I mean, sometimes the secretary's appointed, but then the president gets to appoint all the assistant secretaries. Sometimes, as with Hillary, I suspect, they are powerful enough that they negotiate a deal where they get to appoint their own assistant secretaries. Sometimes the cabinet secretary is just like a figurehead, a yes minister type. And that's sort of the way it should work. I mean, power should be made in the White House. It's not like, the secretaries are sort of inevitably captured by the bureaucracies.
Well, that brings us to foreign policy, where it's a big question whether policy is going to be made in the White House, because I think if the National Security Advisor, Jim Jones, has his say, you'll get a different policy than you will if Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State, has her say. I would imagine...
How so?
I'm guessing that he... Well, I think he's more of a realist, and she's closer to... although he has a military background, but he's a realist, so I think he is... she is toward the neocon end of the liberal spectrum. I mean, you can call her a liberal hawk or whatever. I think
you're not talking about Israel and Gaza. You're talking about a more general worldview.
Well, in the Middle East, that's one place where this would play out. I certainly think he would be more to my liking than she would, judging by the things she has said, for a long time now. Now, there's some question as to whether the things she said have reflected her being a New York senator or her actual beliefs or what, but... I think a warning sign in the foreign policy realm is that Dennis Ross is, now whether this is just him promoting himself or it's true, but his name is being floated for getting some kind of high-level job like special envoy to Iran or in the Middle East or something. And that's somebody who I would say is, he does a lot of consorting with neocons, and I suspect he's fine with the Clintons. And I would not expect him to make any progress by my lights.
The neocon debate is sort of in the past 8 years, as I understand it, has been between Wilsonian idealistic neocons who want to spread democracy on the grounds that democracy is the enemy of terror, and especially in Iraq and Iran and North Korea. And isn't that debate sort of now obviated? Iraq is done, or it seems to be done, and North Korea and Iran are sort of on their own tracks, and so that debate isn't really relevant anymore. I mean, in a way, it would be relevant in theory because there are a lot of countries that aren't real democracies yet, like Saudi Arabia, but you're right that in that case, American policy has been de facto realist, which is to say making nice to the rulers. So maybe that's a good point that part of the neocon agenda isn't, especially since, I mean, then when it comes to like Palestine, turns out they actually are not in favor of democracy, given the way the last election in the occupied territory turned out. So maybe you're right, and that's not the issue. I mean, even
per se,
even in Iraq. The test would come if there's a coup or something, or if they don't hold the elections, or at some point, all of our work gets sort of tarnished by the fact that an undemocratic government comes to power. But what are we going to do about it? We're not going to invade again.
I mean, now
that's
when
not
you
going
move,
to be an issue.
That's true. The beyond the Middle East, I think the classic kind of realist neocon paradigm matters. Like if you look at Russia and Georgia. And the neocons are saying, like, oh, but Georgia's a beacon of democracy, which is actually, in my view, not true, but or at least is exaggerated. But in any event, they say that. Whereas the realists say, look, you got to do business with Russia, okay? And that's a genuine disagreement. And so there, I think you would get a difference. And I don't know exactly what Hillary would do, but.
Anyway, there was a story in the Times today that may or may not be long-lasting about how we need land routes into Afghanistan, and therefore we have to be nice to both Russia and a bunch of undemocratic countries in the region.
Just to fight the war there, you mean?
If we're really going to make a big deal of Afghanistan, we need their help.
Well, I think Obama's instincts, there's no evidence that he's not a realist by instinct. He did appoint a realist, I think, as his national security advisor. So we'll see. But, most people of my ideological stripe on foreign policy are pretty disappointed by the net kind of upshot of his foreign policy appointments. Well, yeah, because it's just turning out to be business as usual. It's
But business as usual isn't neocon business. Business as usual is something
what's
else.
the difference in a certain sense? I mean, if you believe, as I do, that if you're going to get dramatic progress in the Middle East, you need to be willing to really break some China and domestic politics, certainly including alienating AIPAC, then not being a neocon per se is not enough. You have to to really make a radical departure.
But it's not. But there is a difference between Doug Feith and Dennis Ross.
There is a difference in the way they would fail to make progress in the Middle East. Yes, they would take different paths to failure.
Well, Instapundit is selling "Meet the New Boss, Same as the Old Boss" T-shirt, so maybe we should get one.
That's truer than some people like me would like. That reminds me of my little theory about how affirmative action is going to help the Republicans. De facto, informal affirmative action, which is that I think liberals are going to be reluctant to criticize Obama. Liberals both in the media and in some special interest groups, but especially the media, because he's black, basically. Whereas the people on the right are not going to hold back. And I think Obama shows real signs of kind of wanting to be as widely liked as possible. Not unusual among human beings or politicians. Right. But so he will be responding. He will trying to be. He will. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. And in other words, I think his race is going to keep liberals from holding his feet to the fire.
That's an
as much as they might otherwise.
That's an interesting theory.
Thank you. What should we call it?
You need to name it. It's a grand theory.
I know. Every good theory needs a name if it's going to become known.
Killing Obama with kindness.
Affirmative inaction.
Yeah, something like that.
I don't know.
Well, that's a good one, though.
Killing Obama with... That's got a nice rhythm.
Not so good, but there's... that is an interesting theory. On the other hand, presidents, once they have 60% popularity, they can maintain that by drawing a sharp distinction with Republicans, right? So it's an easy line to draw if you have 60% of the population behind you. So
yeah, but there's also the fact that this is the narrative he's constructed. He's the guy who brings red and blue together. So
right, but if he brings Rick Warren and 20% of the red, I don't think he has to count out of the remaining 80% of the red, but we'll see. It's a model. Don't let me.
But anyway, you're happy with his rightward drift. I'm not so thrilled, especially in foreign policy. I find it hard to believe that he can keep up the rightward drift. There has to be. You would think some shoe has to drop. I don't think Hilda Solis is enough to placate the left, but. That's what I worry about. Well, I think you're more right in domestic politics than foreign. In domestic politics seems to be more thoroughly controlled by a balance of power among formal interest groups. Whereas foreign policy, a whole lot of Americans are just more or less indifferent to it. And then there are these kind of isolated, strong interest groups. And I think my theory is that they tend to be hawkish, but I'm not sure of that. But I think my theory is that if he's afraid to antagonize those interest groups, we're in trouble.
Huh. Okay.
It's funny. It's funny in a way. The kinds of interest groups you get in foreign policy tend toward the neocon in the sense that the liberal ones are very focused on human rights and democracy, and then the conservative ones, like I think you'd say AIPAC, are just kind of hawkish. It seems to me like a lot of the interest groups are either there's not a good realist lobby in Washington.
Good point. You can't be the first to have realized that.
I'm sure I'm not.
Isn't that why the Council on Foreign Relations was invented? Anyway.
What, you're calling them realists?
Weren't they originally? No?
How many people in the CFR opposed the Iraq War, which I think realists were true realists were doing?
That wouldn't be originally. That would be
what?
That's recently, not originally. Yes, I think.
Were they originally realists? Well, I think, yeah, they were. I mean, the establishment should be realist. The establishment should be, you know, oh well, forget my grand theories about foreign relations. But the CFR, I would not call it exactly what we need right now.
Okay, time for the fun part.
Okay, our festive New Year's thing.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mickey.
Okay.
Now, I blame you for coming up with most of these categories.
You should.
And my idea was cruelly rebuffed. My idea was we each come up with a New Year's resolution for each other. That would have had entertainment value. But no. Mickey wouldn't have any of that.
Well, at that point, I had enough categories.
Yeah.
And
I think you were afraid of the resolution that was going to be foisted on you.
Yes, exactly. You can still foist it on me. Go ahead.
No,
it's a free country.
No.
Nobody's stopping you. So we have a bunch of categories, now we have a bunch of predictions.
Yeah, you have more than I do. I have pretty lame things to
First
say here, I think. Okay.
Go ahead.
You want to start out in the order that I think you sent? We had them. It's like stupidest thing I said last year is the first one.
Yes. Stupidest thing I said
what's
last
yours?
year. Sorry?
What's yours?
Well, there are a number of candidates, including generally downplaying the economic financial crisis, and I didn't really see it coming until I got sort of various anguished emails from Republican bankers saying you don't know what's coming. But the stupidest thing I said last year was pointed out by a friend who's one of those nice friends who sends you the stupid things you say. Obama files in the press and elsewhere are deluding themselves. I wrote this in early October. Are deluding themselves if they think they can ride the economic crisis and the reaction against negativity to victory in a month. So I said Obama was stupid if he thought he could just ride the economic crisis to a win, and of course that's exactly what happened.
Well, it's not exactly what happened. McCain had to misplay the economic crisis spectacularly with that weird stunt where he threatened to cancel the debate, and I think that had a lot to do with it.
I think Obama would have won it anyway, and even without the stunt, although the stunt was a disaster. And, and I thought some other issue would come up. I mean, there'd be an issue about Reverend Wright, or, some worries about Obama being too far left, or some scandal the Republicans were holding in reserve, or something. And as usual with my predictions of constant fast change, it was just stasis. Go ahead.
I shared that intuition, actually, that the cheap shots depicting Obama as far left and an enemy of the state and so on would work. I thought they would work, too. So if what you thought was stupid, then what I thought was stupid. So I share in your stupidity. That's not what I was going to say, though, for my stupid
What's your stupid thing?
Well, I was having trouble because not that I don't say stupid things. I just couldn't remember many things I said at all last year. It's kind of a blur.
You and Chris Matthews.
What? Chris
Matthews at the end of a show, he can't remember anything he said for the previous hour. It's like...
No, that's kind of the way I am. And that's an advantage you have is you are writing things down. You're spending a longer time formulating them, and then they're out there and they keep getting attacked in the blogosphere. When it's on video, it just goes by. The commenter sees on it a little bit. It's not the same thing.
So you said nothing stupid last year?
No, I wouldn't say that.
You can remember.
I remember what in retrospect seems like a very stupid question that I asked an economist on Blogging Heads, which was, I actually think I tried this out on you and it made sense to you, so you can share in my stupidity this time. I think I said to you before this dialogue with this guy, I said, I don't get it. It was at the beginning of the financial crisis. I said, if all this money is coming out of the stock market as it plummets, then why isn't it going into the credit markets and keeping credit robust, keeping interest rates low, right? I mean, it's got to go somewhere. You take it out of the stock market, where can it go but the credit markets, right? Even if you just put it in your bank, it's in the credit market.
Why was that
good
stupid?
Question, you'd think. Does that still seem like a good question to you, Mickey?
Why was that stupid?
You are so stupid, man.
It turns out it was all going into Bernie Madoff's hedge fund.
No, here's I asked Robert Schiller, this eminent economist, on Blogging Heads, and he pointed out that there is no money in the stock market that's being pulled out, okay? There's no stock market pot with a bunch of money in it. What happens when I decide to bail out of the stock market, I sell my stock.
To somebody else who comes in, yeah.
Yeah, and it's true that when the money comes to me, I could put it in a savings account. On the other hand, the money has come from someone else who previously could have, for all we know, had it in the savings account. So there's no money coming out. All that's changing is the valuation of the stocks, which is so you get it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, well, you're getting it faster than I got it. It took him about like an hour and a half to explain it to me. So
well, I'm sure it seemed like 2 hours and a half.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, that's okay. That's a pretty smart, stupid thing to say. So.
Well, I think secretly my agenda there was to sound, on the one hand, humble, and yet on the other hand, not as stupid as you would sound if you said something really stupid.
We're going to push the boundaries of false modesty even further by asking for the smartest thing we said.
Yeah.
You want to go first?
I'm not sure I have something for that.
Okay, well,
I think all I could think of was it's the same thing I've been saying since 9/11. I maintain this is true, that the enemy is hatred. That's the thing you want to minimize. In the war on terror, that's the thing Israel should be trying to minimize. That's the thing America should be trying to minimize. Because we are seeing the, quote, growing lethality of hatred, or will see it as it becomes easier and easier to stage terrorist attacks of larger and larger proportions as technology evolves.
We did that. We elected Obama.
Right. So in that sense, yeah, so it was doubly smart.
The perfect
it was almost prescient.
bad cop, good cop routine.
Yeah, and I mean the disappointment now. This leads back to the disappointment of his emerging foreign policy. We now worry that he will not, in fact, be that great hatred neutralizer. But we'll see. We'll see. What's your smart thing?
Well, I was going to say the smart thing was the Edwards love child thing was not exactly smart.
It was
predicting that
it was right. You were right before anybody else, just about.
Right, and I think Matthew Iglesias, for one, owes me an apology for various scurrilous jibes he directed in my
Mickey,
direction.
let's pause. Could we pause here and demand an apology from Matt Iglesias?
No, I'm not a demanding apology type of guy.
I'll do it on your behalf, Mickey.
But
Matt, I demand an apology, man. Who do you think you are? He's barely out of diapers, Mickey.
And the poor guy, I mean, he just got gelded by thinkprogress.com. He wrote something.
Yeah, I saw that you dove into that controversy. For anybody who missed it, the Think Progress czar stepped in and just clarified the fact that he doesn't speak for the CAP Action Fund or something, which I guess runs their blogs. When he
had pissed on some group called Third Way, and they're an ally of theirs. So that, I mean, how can you blog if every time you blog something your boss disagrees with, the boss takes over your blog and says, we disassociate ourselves from this? I mean, it's. I think they owe him an apology, and then maybe once they give him the apology, he'll have the manhood to give me an apology. How about that?
Well, actually, I mean, given the fact that you didn't have the manhood to debate Ezra Klein after dissing him, I'm not sure you want to get into the manhood comparison business, Mickey, frankly.
I'm not in the manhood comparison business, but I didn't let Ezra Klein come onto my blog and say we disagree with what Mickey said. So it's just was honorable cowardice on my part.
You're right.
Honorable macho cowardness.
Well, anyway, I'm demanding an apology from Matt Iglesias. I actually think, I mean, that was the only time that his overlords had done that, and I'll bet they won't do it again, given the fact that there were like 7 jillion comments on that item complaining about it.
Well, and he's sniping. He now snipes at Third Way every time he can get, but that's
I
different.
applaud that initiative.
That's different. But the smartest thing I did was talking myself out of a pimping arrest in New Hampshire when I was taking some women home to their hotel, which turned out to be the center of prostitution in the Northeast United States.
I didn't know about this. You almost got arrested for pimping?
I got pulled over and talked my way out of it.
Now, Mickey, that part of your performance I'm disappointed in, but the fact that you were in a position to get arrested As a pimp, I'm extremely impressed. Why did you blow it? This would have been the best piece of publicity to hit you in like a decade, man.
I'm secretly reveling in it, but well, I did blog about it. I did blog about it, but it it.
That's not the same as actually doing the jail time.
It would have been better. Great. It would have been better for my street cred if I'd done the time. I agree.
Oh, jeez. Do I have to explain everything to you?
My girls.
You need a Colonel Tom Parker, Mickey.
My girls were not into doing the time. So we talked around.
I'm going to leave that potential joke right where it is. I'm going to take it nowhere.
What about you?
What, the pimping? It's a slow economy, but I'm, making of it what I can.
No, the smartest thing you did. Have you said the smartest thing you did?
I already said the smartest thing. I couldn't come up with a good smartest thing, and I said, hatred thing.
Okay, the best thing that's happened in the past year aside from Obama's election.
Okay, I think the best thing that happened aside from that was the closely related fact, that McCain's taking the low road did not work in the election. So the politics of fear failed. They tried to paint him as, not just a far lefty, not just a radical, but a true literal enemy of the state who pals around with terrorists. They failed. It would have been a horrible precedent and would have polluted campaign politics for decades to come if it had succeeded. It failed. Hooray, that was good.
Okay.
What about you? Best thing that happened other than Obama winning?
Two things. One, I think it's great that while I don't want Detroit to collapse, it's great that they collapsed right now, just as card check was coming up, so that people could see the effects of Wagner Act unionism and have second thoughts about whether they want to extend it to every sector of the economy. So that was a fortuitous happening.
I should say that there are those who would argue that that's not what has handicapped the American auto companies.
There are, but you think it's a coincidence that all the union firms are going bust and all the non-union firms are thriving?
Well, but it's also the case that the union firms are American companies with, American guys running them. Well, there's that difference, too. And the fact is, the culture of Japan is a culture of good design that takes into account the actual needs of the people using the product, and that's really different.
Honda's making perfectly good cars in Marysville, Ohio, not the South. They've been doing it for at least a decade.
Right,
they do it with American workers. They're just non-union workers, and they do a good job.
But I'm saying that it has to do with design and engineering in large part, the fact that you want to buy their cars regardless of where they're made.
Actually, there's a pretty good article in the New York Times pointing out, the common complaint about Detroit is our engineers design great cars, and then these cost cutters come through and just, cheapen them, especially the interiors. If you drive an American car, the Ford 500, now the Taurus is a perfect example, perfectly good car with an incredibly cheap interior because at the end of the design process, they realize, hey, we're $2,000 short. We have to cut $1,000 out of the interior, and they come through and they cheapen everything in the interior, and the result is a car people don't want to buy, and it's not worth the money. That's a cost problem feeding back through the design process. American designers are just not that bad.
That's not what for years and years has made American cars just flat out less reliable for the most part, with a few exceptions.
No, that's right, but crappy assembly by UAW workers has. The UAW...
No, I don't think that's all. Isn't it the case that the engineering is just... There's a term for engineering a term for the precision of the engineering.
Right, but no, they're both factors, but the classic example is the Acura Legend, which was made both in Japan and England. Same car, same design. It was marketed by the British company as the Sterling, okay? The Acura Legend was one of the most reliable cars on the market. The Sterling, exact same design, but made by British workers on British assembly lines, was one of the crappiest cars on the market. Same design, different workers, good car, crap car. So that's the counterexample.
Okay, so anyway, this is under what category? That was the best thing or the worst? That was the best thing.
But my actual nominee is that California finally threw out gerrymandering. The one thing Schwarzenegger did, he got through a resolution that throws out politically drawn districts and has some sort of complicated but seemingly neutral and apolitical mechanism for drawing district lines in state races. At least it's a foot in the door, and we should get some more moderate Democrats out of the process.
Yeah.
So, there you go.
Okay. And for me, the worst thing that happened other than the economy... Oh, it's related to my best thing. The best thing was that the low road didn't work in the sense of giving McCain the election. The worst thing is that it did take a toll on Obama, I think, in the sense... it Mau-Mau'd Obama into some of the rightward movement that we're seeing. And I think in foreign affairs in particular... all the stuff about, you're a Muslim, you won't defend Israel, and so on. I think he's going to work harder than is optimal to neutralize those impressions and overshoot the mark. And as a result, not do some of the great things he could do in foreign policy, like bring peace to the Middle East, if he weren't so concerned with those impressions. So that's the worst thing. So my best thing and my worst thing are like flip sides of the same thing. How's that for economy, Mickey?
Very economy means you didn't have to come up with two ideas.
There's that, yeah.
So, I admire that.
Person most disappointed in.
For what I haven't done my worst things yet.
Oh, well.
I'll go through them quickly.
That's another joke I'm going to leave on the table. Okay, do your worst thing.
Worst things. The anti-affirmative action, anti-race preference initiative failed in Colorado. It would be good for my side to be able to boast that it passed. It didn't pass. An anti-amnesty, sort of extreme you have to call this guy anti-immigrant candidate, the mayor of Hazleton, lost his race for Congress. It would have been great for my side if I could boast that he won and scare all the people who are now less scared of the anti-amnesty forces. A very good blogger and a very nice guy, Dean Barnett, died. That was a really bad thing that happened.
Wait, he's not the Economist guy, is he?
No, he was
okay.
Sox blog. He then blogged for Hugh Hewitt. He was a very good writer and a very smart guy. And he's one of these guys that emerged from nowhere, and the blogging being a meritocracy just on the force of him being good and saying things that other people weren't willing to say and saying them well. He came to people's attention, but he passed away.
How old was he?
He had some, I think, a lung disease. Anyway, it was.
How old was he?
He wasn't that old. He was like younger than I am. But the worst thing that happened is on Drudge today, they've discovered the 3 genes that turn an ordinary flu into a global pandemic. So how if you're a terrorist, you see this. You have some home lab where you figure out how to turn.
These are the genes in the virus itself?
In the virus itself. You figure out how to change these 3 genes, and you have the 12 monkeys scenario where you can travel around the world and spread pandemic.
Yep.
Bad scene.
Right. Of course, you'd have to have some pretty well-organized and well-financed terrorism, but that's all the more reason to follow my golden rule, which is reduce the number of people who want to be terrorists and want to finance terrorism.
In 12 Monkeys, he just travels around the world on a plane with vials. Why can't you do that?
Because that's just the end stage of the process, though. I mean, first you got to assemble the brains and the equipment to do the genetic engineering. Now, that will get easier and easier as time passes. That's why time is running out. So current policies, which are actually increasing, in some cases, the number of people who want to commit or support terrorism, are really ill-advised.
I have a feeling you say that.
Yeah, but that's getting kind of...
But that only buys us a few decades until it gets so easy that one guy can do it, and then the chances of there not being one sociopath are very slim.
Yeah, but that'll be after the Blogging Heads IPO, Mickey, so it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
Right?
Moving right along.
Yeah, where are we? Person most disappointed in?
Yes.
Me, John McCain, for taking the low road. Again, I'm milking this one thing for a lot here, but it's not that I thought he was really morally pure. It's just that I thought he had enough invested in the image of moral purity that in a sheerly calculating, self-interested way, he would not descend to the levels he descended.
He managed to destroy his image without taking the real low road that might have helped him. He didn't bring up Reverend Wright.
Jeremiah Wright?
He ruled Wright out.
That was just because he had this moment of classic McCain, moral posturing of saying, we'll never get into Jeremiah Wright, and then he was hobbled by that. He couldn't descend completely.
He didn't go that low. How low did he go?
What
did he do that was so damn low?
It partly depends on how many of Sarah Palin's lines you think were scripted. But, I mean, did she or did she not get clearance to say he's palling around with terrorists? As you know, I think that one takes it truly into the realm of McCarthyism, depicting the person as a literal enemy of the state.
It just means we've been through this, but I'm sure
that
line was scripted,
anyway.
I assume. How could that line not have been scripted?
Well, that's my feeling. So anyway, what's your most disappointed in person?
I guess I was disappointed in John Edwards because, just because his cover-up was so inept, that even unraveled, unprecedented, the mainstream media wanted to protect him, and he was so incompetent that they couldn't ultimately. I guess I was disappointed in Obama's race speech because it seems to me he had a great occasion to do much more than he did. And I guess I'm disappointed in the Daily Kos in the Edwards thing. There was a very good blogger named Lee Stranahan who said, wait, Edwards is behaving really squirrely here. There must be something here. And instead of just letting him say his thing, they actually kicked him off the site, which was, I think, a disappointing. I don't understand with Daily Kos. There are some ties between the Edwards campaign and them, and they were much too loyal to Edwards and inimical to free speech. They're paying the price now. Their hits
I wouldn't
are
go
going down.
that far. I wouldn't go that far, but.
Well, okay.
I mean, when the government steps in and silences you, that's inimical to free speech. I think any given periodical is going to be selective about the views it amplifies. Okay.
If you run a huge blog that's a debating society, you should have. I mean, I think you shouldn't ban people for saying things you don't like. But anyway, okay.
Okay, so person most unexpectedly impressed by, that would be you, Mickey, because it seems like with this election, you really did want Obama to win. I don't think you really did want Kerry to win. You claimed you did. I think you manifestly did not. In this case, although I wouldn't say your blog was exactly systematically devoted to getting him elected, and that's not what you would define as its mission, I know, but I do think you really wanted the Democrat to win this time. I'm really impressed by that, Mickey.
Thank you, Bob. And there is an Obama sign in my window behind me.
Really?
Which you can't really see, but that little patch of blue is an Obama.
We've got an Obama bumper sticker that's been there since before the primaries, man.
But I have to put that up in order for my house not to be burned down by my left-wing neighbors. So it could be just self-preservation.
This couldn't be Mickey Kaus's house. By the way, this blog called Fire Mickey Kaus, I see you were generously linking to that. That's great.
Well, they're very useful because they
link to you.
The weak items they attack really are weak items. And B, I have to go and put through the dates. I write a bunch of items, and I have to go put through the dates I write them. And I always forget what date I wrote them. So I can go to Fire Mickey Kaus, and they say Mickey Kaus said this stupid thing on this day. And I know what date I wrote it, and I can go back and put in the correct date. So they're very useful to me.
Win-win. So who's your most unexpectedly impressive person?
Well, people who were unexpected. I didn't expect Arianna Huffington to have the balls to go after John Edwards. Then she retracted, but that was a good thing. She started the ball rolling. Nate Silver was impressively right on a number of occasions.
He even called this Al Franken. What looks like it's going to be an Al Franken.
It looks like he's going to be
right
right about Al Franken too. Yes, I was hoping he'd be wrong. And this guy, and I must have been Warren Buffett. I find a reassuring presence in the crisis, saying, "Well, we'll get through this." And also, he was very good with John Edwards. He said, if John Edwards was a firm, he'd mount a class action suit and ask for his money back. So, those are my three, and there's another one that I've written down here that I can't read. So,
Buffett's a big supporter of Planned Parenthood,
I know what
so
it was.
right there, you know he's going to have issues with Edwards. But
I know what my big one was. The best thing that happened all year was this meeting they had at the Democratic Convention where a bunch of black mayors got around and rallied people against the teachers' unions, and there was a huge contingent of charter school supporters there who were cheering them on. And that was completely unexpected and
impressive.
And I thought it was impressive. And I thought all these mayors, Mayor Fenty, Mayor Nutter, Mayor Booker, and the leader of the Colorado State House were all very impressive. The black leaders of the future. And they were all bald, too. That was the other impressive thing.
Bald black men. So, now we're at an hour and 9 minutes. Do we have time to actually go through, like we were going to do some predictions?
Well, why don't we just do one? Or
well, let's just do like lightning round, and let's just be really fast.
Okay.
Okay, card check.
I don't think it'll pass.
Yeah,
Ever.
I mean, because and Obama, he hasn't been standing up for his base, so why would you expect him to do so now? I mean, in the appointments process, he doesn't seem to. And then immigration. Were you still going to talk about that?
No, I don't think comprehensive reform will go through, and I also don't think the DREAM Act, which is sort of a third of comprehensive reform, a third of
right.
We
covered the DREAM Act last time.
So
it was your nightmare.
It's a nightmare.
On immigration, I'm like, who's got time? We got the economy. We got 2 wars. I just don't think it's going to be on the radar screen.
Yeah.
Mideast peace, that was going to be mine.
Right.
I predict there will not be it in the next year in any enduring way. There's a radical prediction. I think Obama, at this point especially, would have to do something really radical, which is basically just get together a bunch of outside powers, whatever, Europe, Russia, Arab countries, and just decide on what a fair settlement would be to a fairly high level of detail, a fair 2-state solution, and just go to the 2 parties and say, this is what we think is a fair deal. If you both agree, we will supply the troops to ensure order on the Palestinian side, NATO troops, whatever. If one of you does not approve of it, then you are the problem. And either side, and if both of you decline, then how would you change it? I think it would take something that radical.
That doesn't sound like a plan that works, but go ahead.
No,
okay.
Well, what is at this point? Terrorism. I was supposed to make a prediction about terrorism. There will be terrorism, and terrorists will amplify this emerging narrative that has expanded their enemy from the American-Israel axis to the American-Israel-India axis. They really want to play this clash of civilizations narrative as broadly as they can.
And you think
we will no doubt play into their hands and do everything we can to give support to their narrative.
And there'll be more Mumbai-like attacks or fewer?
More or fewer? Oh, geez, I don't know. I don't think there will be the big one in the next calendar year. Either a true nuke or a biological weapon. There could be a dirty nuke.
And will there be... it would be very easy to pull off a Mumbai-like attack in the United States.
Well, I don't think trivially easy. You got to get a bunch of guys who are willing to die, and you got to get them into America.
But look at the havoc. Everybody has the same idea. Look at the havoc the Beltway sniper hat wreaked. Just 2 guys in a Chevy.
Right, but that wasn't Mumbai-like because that did not... that's the thing that's easier to do because you don't have to want to die. Those guys could have gotten away with it.
Okay, so you don't want to die. You leave a bomb at a shopping mall every weekend.
Okay, well, that's not Mumbai-like. That's different. Yeah,
okay.
I would expect... like everybody, I'm shocked we haven't seen stuff like that in America.
I meant that it's Mumbai-like and that it is relatively low-tech.
Yeah. Low-tech terrorism. I think we're all surprised there hasn't been more of it, right?
Yeah. Not that we want to encourage it.
No, we're against it.
So, we're supposed to have shocking predictions, too.
Oh, I don't have a shock. Do you have a shocking prediction?
I have 3 predictions. None of them are very shocking. One of which is Salzburg will be out of the New York Times. There's a long... it just seems to be that the mainstream media is collapsing so quickly, and the Times is...
That is quick. We should have actually reserved a segment on that. But
it is actually... if you look at there was a Pew poll that showed more people now get their news from the Internet than from dailies. The Internet chart is going up like this. The daily newspaper chart is going down like this.
No, it's a total crisis for the business model that you and I have relied on for our income for these many years.
And the Times is especially perilous because they have Rupert Murdoch trying to put them out of business, and they have an idiot at the helm. So they're in deep, deep trouble. I think the idiot will be out of the helm. I don't think I'm not predicting they'll go broke. I'm just predicting that Prince Salzburger
they won't go broke.
will no longer be in charge there. I think Al Franken will get elected and will turn out to be way more conservative than people think.
Really?
He was for the Iraq War. He's just not that conservative.
I don't like... I got to say,
He's
one time I saw Al Franken on TV. He was giving a talk, and then he addressed questioners at the end. And I just thought, this guy's a total jerk. There were people in the audience who wanted to be his friend. They were asking friendly questions. And he was like ridiculing them gratuitously and just being mean. He's just a jerk.
He's never been a jerk to me.
Oh, you know him personally, do you?
No, he's left haranguing messages on my voicemail saying, why don't you make this point about, why don't you attack the conservatives for this twice, I think he's made. And they were both reasonable points. He wasn't a jerk about it.
You should come on Blogging Heads with him and talk to him, and in the meanwhile, I will take back everything I just said about him to increase the chances that might happen.
I'd be happy to talk to him, but he's a senator now. Why should he talk to me?
I don't know. I've always thought he's such a nice guy that he would do something like this.
You had Robert Wright and Andy Stern on. That was a valuable service and very eminent. So,
hey.
Why not Al Franken? That was a useful document.
And you mean literally, or you mean useful as a document for your purposes, for anti-left propaganda purposes, or your...
Andy Stern was very unconvincing, and Robert Wright was trying to nudge him to get off card check, and he refused.
Right. You blogged that. Yes, that's right. Thank you for blogging.
And my third point, and this is like the only substantive point I've had to make all day, the economy is going to recover faster than we think because more people are taking wage cuts as opposed to being laid off. As somebody who's taken a wage cut, I have sympathy and would like to think this replicated will lead to some good. I'm reminded by a book by Martin Weitzman called The Share Economy, where he pointed out the essential problem that Keynes addressed is that wages were sticky downwards. And there were two problems. One is that wages were sticky downwards, and the other was in the process of reducing wages to clear the market, you reduced aggregate demand and further deflated the economy. Well, we solved the second problem by massive deficit spending since Keynes, and we're doing that now. The first problem was always difficult, but I think wages are a whole lot less sticky downwards than they used to be because more people are taking pay in the form of bonuses that go down, they take wage cuts and stay on the job. The pay is just much more variable than it used to be, and that has to speed up the adjustment.
Let me just commend to you a piece in the Wall Street Journal by Zachary Karabell in which he made the point more generically that, look, things happen fast these days. This is kind of Filer Faster thesis related. For all we know, the system allows for a rebound that is faster than the rebounds used to be, just as the collapse itself came pretty quickly.
I will read that, although, I've been led into hideous error by thinking that things move so fast now that recessions are impossible.
That would be a mistake. That would be a hideous mistake. So what else? Yet a third of something? What category are we in
those
now?
are three. Franken, New York Times, and the economy.
Okay, wait, my shocking prediction is that Blogging Heads will still be around at the end of 2009 in at least as robust a form as it's in now. And that's shocking because if you're paying attention to the economy and the media implosion, you got to think, what are the chances, right?
Yeah, well, you're not going to cut my pay.
That's for sure.
So,
that is a privilege we leave to people who are paying you in the first place, and we see that they have exercised it.
So, but Blogging Heads is a huge success in terms of hits and the people you're getting, and
that's right.
It's just the finances that are
it's
difficult
just
for everybody.
that damn financing issue. It's that. But I think I'm determined to be creative enough and beg, borrow, and steal.
It has to be a relatively cheap operation, no? There's not a lot of fat in Blogging Heads.
Not as cheap as it will be in a couple of years as the technology evolves. B, probably not as cheap as it could be.
I don't see a lot of fat.
I don't want to scare any of my workers, but probably not as cheap as it could be.
Well, you made the mistake of hiring very competent people.
I know, and they want actual money. That's and the new business model is you hire incompetent people and you pay them less. That's what I'm trying to evolve to.
Okay, well, good luck with that. But that's reassuring to know. So.
Yeah, I think America will breathe easier tonight.
But
do you have any more New Year's-y stuff?
That's it for me.
I gotta say, this tie, I just grabbed it out of the closet, but it's a little on the fetching side, if I do say so myself. The way it plays off of this dark blue shirt and the lighter vest.
Slightly
I'm thinking possibly a little GQ photo spread, maybe.
That's slightly metrosexual of you, Bob. But
well, there's a lot about me you don't know, Mickey.
I'd never seen that side before.
There's a side of me that you just don't know about. Okay, well, I do mean it when I say Happy New Year.
Same to you. And see you again soon.
All right. Have a good year.
Okay, same to you.
All right, bye.